So this this session, I think, is by request. And as I said yesterday, come with your questions. There are 5 panelists, so I want to say to the panelists, we do not have time for all of us to answer every question. I will just say that now. And I'm going to act mostly as a moderator. If I have something that feels really important to add, I will, but mostly I won't. I'll try. So you can direct your questions to the group as a whole. You can direct your questions to individual people. And pretty much, I was going to say pretty much there's no limit, but that's not really quite true. Please stay on the topic of monastic life and exploring monastic life, not emptiness or anything like that for this session. And let's start. We'll just do a little bit of silence. And we can take refuge together. We'll just one time recitation, and I'll do a little teeny tiny motivation, and then we'll just go. And this is a 2-hour session, as I understand, unless the questions run out. And if the questions run out, no reason to be here. Okay. All right. Take a minute to undo lunch dishes or whatever we've just been doing. Visualizing Buddha in the space in front. Self surrounded by all thinking beings. I take refuge until I am awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by his changing the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. And then bring to mind again your own motivation for being here, however long you've been here. And also see how the motivation might have deepened over the course of the last however many days. And then as we share together our questions, our responses, our thoughts on the topic of exploring monastic life, may whatever we do today plant the seeds that will sustain our ordination if we have one, that will help us be clear about how to sustain our practice for all of us, and broaden our motivation very, very, very wide and far, far into the future, to nourish the seeds of our capacity to become fully awakened and strengthen every moment our wish to be able to benefit all living beings. Riding on bodhicitta as the force that will carry us forward. It occurs to me that not everyone may know everyone who's sitting up here in the front. I don't know how much we've been moving around seat-wise. Is that true? Would it be helpful for the, we're all nuns, to introduce ourselves and maybe say a little bit about, very, very short, how long we've been here or how long we've been ordained? Would that be helpful or irrelevant? Helpful. Okay. You start because you're first.
I'm didnt, and I've lived here since 2005, and I ordained in 2006.
It's supposed to go the other way. Okay. Samton. I started hanging out around here around 2006. I was in and out numerous times, and then I ordained 15 years ago.
I'm Vic Shuni. I moved in 2007, and I've been ordained since 2008. And I've been hanging around since before it started.
I'm Thupten Damcho. I moved here from Singapore in 2012 and ordained in 2013.
I'm Tenzin Sepal, and I'm a little bit of an anomaly. I ordained before Venerable started the Abbey, and so I lived elsewhere until 2016, and then joined the community in 2016. I ordained in 2001.
Okay, questions?
Venerables, as the program has gone on, I've realized that celibacy is a big question for me. But also in contemplating that, I realized that I don't really know what celibacy is. All I have are my preconceptions of it from engaging with other religious traditions or engaging with the popular conceptions of, like what's around in the media. But nobody has explained to me really what the Vinaya actually, what monastics that follow the Vinaya actually practice in terms of celibacy. So I kind of want to ask, can you explain it to me like I'm 12 years old or 13 years old, what is it? Because as I've also practiced celibacy throughout this year, I have noticed that it's more, there are many dimensions to it. One is, obviously not having sexual contact with others, but there's the other dimensions of the mind, right? About how you see others, about how you treat others, about how you talk about others. And so I hear, for example, that it is a transgression against a root precept, but I don't know what a root precept is, and I don't know what the consequences for that are, or what the layers of that are, right? Like, is, for example, like masturbation something that breaks that precept, or is it not, or is it just sex with others? Like, those are questions that I've never really had the opportunity to ask someone that I would like to ask. Yeah. Thank you.
First, I wanted to say that I'm glad that you have experienced this and you realize it's not just a physical thing. I want to reinforce that. I just want to back up and say I chose, before I moved here, to be celibate, and I gave myself a 1-year contract. And I had been actually focusing on relationships since I was like 7, probably, or 8 or 9. I mean, I just couldn't remember my whole life interacting with people as potential partners. And it started at a very young age from the conditioning I had. So that year that I did that, which was before I moved here, I was like, I noticed just what you said, in a way, how your mind changes and how you interact with people changes. And this is a huge part of this. So I want to reinforce that you've had that experience. I had that experience, and at the end of the year, I was like, I'm in. I'm not going to think about this again. It was so much better. But anyway, more to your question, in terms of the precept side of it. We have a number of precepts around our sexuality and different levels of it. And we have minor precepts, like the fence on our robe. If you don't break the minor precepts, you probably won't break the bigger precepts. So we have layers of precepts that have or different levels of transgression. That's how the precepts work. There's categories for those who are fully ordained. And so to break the precept at the root means to have sexual intercourse where there's penetration like the width of a hair. And so that doesn't go too far. But for nuns, there's also, we have 8 parajikas, 8 precepts that if you break from the root, you actually have kind of defeated your monastic life. And another one of those has to do with 8 behaviors that if you do all 8 of those, you've done a parajika. And so there are things that kind of would lead you up to having intercourse. And then there's precepts that are different for the monks, fully ordained monks and fully ordained nuns, and especially around masturbation. It's a more minor one for the nuns, and it's a more major one for the monks, but it's not a defeat, it's not a parajika, it's not something where you lose your ordination, but it is the next level. So it's a big deal if you break that one as a monk. And for a nun, I think it's a lapse or something. So it's something, the consequences and how you restore. You can't restore a precept that a parajika or a defeat. You're defeated, and that is what sexual intercourse is. But the other ones you can restore. Although with that second one, you're hanging on by a thread a little bit, and it's a lot of work to restore. So it's better not to get in the situation where you're breaking that one. Although if you're asleep, like people who might have say you have a dream while you're asleep and you ejaculate, that's actually not, I don't think it's even covered. Yeah, it's an exception because it's not conscious. The problem is sometimes you're half asleep and half awake. That's conscious. You have to be careful. And for me, my own personal experience is that became less of a problem as I got older. It really helps when your hormones quit. Now we'll let other people add. I'm sure there's more to answer the question.
I just want to clarify about the defeats. Those apply to the fully ordained, so that it's like especially even the the parajika, you're still going to be out, but those who are training without the fully ordained precept, it's not something that you hold. You are training in it. You're training in it.
But you're also out.
Yeah, you're out. If you have sexual intercourse, but like the masturbation one for monks, I think you should be training in it all the time. But it's not going to be a sangha because they don't have that precept.
When you're not fully ordained, your level of precepts aren't categorized the same because you actually are training for full ordination. And so some of those things, although they might not be called a parajika, they still would disqualify you. And the other ones, I don't actually think they say how you remedy those. Because they're considered, they're all like duskrita.
Yeah, wrongdoings. You confess to one person.
Yeah, so something that for a fully ordained might be quite serious. It's still serious if you're not fully ordained, but the way you remedy it is a lot easier.
But I would say, yeah. You are still training in it as a novice, so it's not like, oh yeah, whatever, I don't have that precept at that level, do whatever I want. Then why are you ordained at all, because you want to take on these trainings. But it's great that you noticed, like Venerable Tarpa said too, it's not just this physical, literal aspect of it. When you study the precepts literally, like what orifice, what depth, it gets so technical, but what you're really wanting to work with is the mind, right? So I don't know if that's come up in EML. I found these discussions so helpful in terms of like, what am I really looking for in a sexual relationship? What does sex represent? What is actually going on emotionally, or like culturally, affliction-wise. It was just so interesting to hear from many people about that too, Everything from it represents independence and rebellion to love to, and when I could figure that out for myself, what it was supposedly representing, it was a lot easier to work with. Yeah. And be like, no, this is totally a lie. It doesn't represent love at all. There are other things I can do to cultivate love.
If I could ask a follow-up question,
First,
Venerables.
I want to respond to what you said about the relationships with other people, because Venerable Tarpa alluded to it. But once you have really made the commitment that I'm not looking for a partner anymore, I'm not looking for attractive people anymore. If I see someone that I feel attracted to, here we do our best to simply step out. Don't contact. Don't really. I mean, guests come and go. It may look a little bit rude, but they don't need to know why I'm not dealing with them. But we make ourselves, we separate ourselves from even the thought. No homosexual, right? That's not an original with us, but we carry it on. He's not a monk anymore, the guy we learned this from. So then the possibility of being in relationship with anybody, anytime, in a clean, clear way is so liberating. Oh my gosh. And it's super important to pay attention constantly to that mind that may want a hook, looking for the hooks, and the hooks can be super subtle. But that's a deeper level of practicing celibacy. Okay.
The follow-up is with regards to other kinds of physical contact, like hugging or touching, or that's been a thing. I have some friends that are very touchy-feely, and so this year that I'm practicing celibacy, I don't know where to draw that line. Like, I understand the no sexual contact, that I understand, but there's all these things that seem sort of adjacent to it that I don't know where the precepts draw the line, or where that is drawn. Yes. Yeah, Hispanic culture is more touchy, right? Even we kiss hello, right? And luckily, like, I'm gay and I kiss hello. We kiss hello only to women, so that's not it doesn't ignite anything for me. But we're more. It's a very touchy culture. I find in America it's easier because people tend to respect their personal space, but in Latin America that's not the norm.
Lamcha and I were just earlier this year in Brazil. Yes, everybody hugs everybody. So, we just sort of went with the flow. We did this as much as we could, but in certain situations, it was mostly getting hugs from women, but the men would sort of and we would just, do our best to do this. And the men did get it, but it seemed just too rude to sort of say, don't touch me. So we were just, getting hugs, and it was fine because that was the culture. Here, the contractors have been coming out here nonstop, so it makes sense for us to put out our hand and shake their hand. It would be very weird for us to go like this to a subcontractor. It's hard enough to get them here anyway. So and then, when I go and visit my family, of course I'm hugging my family. There's nothing going on there. And so it's very normal thing to do. They would be totally repulsed if I, went like this to my family. So it's very specific situations. Since you are gay, if you're noticing that, another gay man wants to hug you, well, right now you're not a monastic, you're not an anagarika, but if you want to start training in that direction, you might just say, you know what, I would rather that we just, I don't know, you could do this.
And I don't think it's just about literal physical contact, right? What Venerable Children got me to pay a lot of attention to is how you flirt. It's entirely verbal. It's just how you want to be around someone. One time I was with a group of young people thinking, yeah, it's a group, it's totally normal. She's like, pay attention to how you are with peers, like, I'm the funny one who gets all the attention. Just that alone, because I'm the funny girl. That's how you attract people. You catch all this garbage that you've been using to get attention in the lay world. So for me, it was not so much the physical part, but so much about speech, how I put forward my personality to attract attention and what I'm hoping to get out of it. So that can be something to pay attention to as well.
A lot of how we interact with people either supports or, Yeah, it supports our identity. So there's a lot about identity that will get challenged when we step away from sexual relationships, but also even sticky emotional friendships. You know, so it's the whole spectrum of identifying where am I looking for happiness, and beginning to see that as soon as we put that externally to ourselves, we are vulnerable. And, you know, learning more and more to trust the law of cause and effect, that, oh, happiness really comes from my mind, and cultivating that. But it's a gradual process of withdrawing, don't you think, those of you? And, you know, there will be mistakes, but you learn from them and try not to do them again.
I was just recalling that I was registering for some online. This is during COVID, right? So everything was online. I was registering for. I wanted some kind of workshop. I think it was a workshop with the San Francisco Zen Center, might have been, that ask you to identify as you register. Do you identify as, I don't know if the language was right, homosexual or heterosexual? And I thought, I don't identify as either one. And it was really clear to my mind, I don't identify as either one at this point. I certainly have before, but I don't anymore. And, you know, I didn't sign up for the workshop because there wasn't another option that said none of the above, right? I couldn't even write it down. So it changes how so there's a whole culture around how we even identify sexually, right? Yeah.
So I want to just go back to where I started. The thing that's so great about this is it frees you up. And then your relationships with people are so much better. I mean, you have you're not trying to get anything. You can have relationships where you're just going to be there. And you don't have all this backpack of garbage that you're carrying along, weighing you down in a relationship with another human being, whether you're a monastic or not. That's the first thing I noticed. I wasn't a monastic when I did this, and I don't know if I was thinking about monastic life. I just decided to do this one day. So yeah, it was a great freedom, and I really appreciated how my relationships with people opened up in a way.
So one question that's been posed to us the last week or so is, do we really believe in awakening? And it's a hard question for me because I theoretically believe in it, intellectually, sure, but really like deep, deep down, I don't know. And I wonder for any of you, you know, what that process looked like for you. You know, at what point did you really get that really deep-seated heart sense that, yes, full awakening is possible, not just for people like His Holiness or these great masters, but, you know, like an ordinary person like me. You know, when I think about, when I look at, you know, what progress have I made, it feels so incremental, it feels so slow. And part of that is, you know, I'm a fetus in this whole process. But I thought it might be beneficial to just hear from people who've been steeped in this life for decades, what that process looked like for you and what really helped you strengthen that conviction in full awakening.
I want to hear what people say. Actually, I had to educate myself. What works for me around this is I educated myself as to how this unfolding would happen. And I realized that from what I've learned in our tradition is that it's unrealistic for me to think that I won't have doubt. So, because you have to, for many people, until they have a realization, some level of realization, they don't know. And so they're going to have doubt. So I now have a more realistic expectation of myself that doubt is part of what I have to work with on the path, and that I just don't let those things get in my way. To me, this comes down to more the fortitude of practicing the Dharma, is where it has ended up for me at this point. And for my own experience, I think that the way I understand the path intellectually makes sense, and I keep trying to understand that more and more. But from my own experience, because I try to think about everything in terms of my own experience, to me, what it says intellectually does make sense to me through my own experience, because I can see changes in myself, and I can see from my own experiences in meditation and understanding and observing my own mind that what I've learned about the mind makes sense. And even that, although omniscience seems like mind-boggling, in a way, it kind of makes sense to me too. A fully unobscured mind is fully unobscured. It's like, and so, there's just ways that I work with it that have worked for me. And I find that the bigger item here is learning how to work with doubt, learning how to work with being realistic, learning how to work with things, understand how gradual the path is, and then learning how to have fortitude. That's where I go with it.
I think in an ideal world, we'd all have some really deep experience of the Four Noble Truths before we ordained, but that's not how it works for most people. And so study is really important. It's not the whole game, but it's very important to understand what did the Buddha teach, and not just how to work with afflictions. That's important, but also we need the breadth and depth of the path, and that's the beauty. For me, that's the beauty of the Lam Rim. Because when we can study a Lam Rim text from beginning to end, you get some idea of how it's possible for a mind stream to go from completely obscured all the way to full awakening. And here's all the precision, all the detail of how to do that. If you think about how we all have afflictions, those afflictions are impermanent. They're constantly changing. They arise, they don't arise, they change, they get stronger, they get weaker. And so all impermanent things have causes. So look at the causes. There are causes to the afflictions. There are causes to all the negative actions that we create. And then if there are causes, then there's a way to remove the cause. That just makes logical sense to me. And if you follow that through and really study that in terms of more in-depth teachings on the Four Noble Truths, you can develop your own conviction. Intellectually, that's a good start. And then you start, you build on what you've already found in your experience, which is, oh, I can work with the afflictions. And they do lessen the more attention I give to them, or the more I give to the antidotes and the disadvantages of them. And so in that way, it's kind of like bridging the gap between the intellectual possibility and our own direct experience.
So I want to recall something that Jeffrey Hopkins said in the last year. He talked, he studied emptiness extensively, but he talked a lot about how compassion opened his mind. So to me, that was really kind of powerful, because it helped me see more how it's two wings of a bird, like we hear about, and the profundity of that. That when you think about your mind, and you think about you need a mind that is maybe more receptive, it takes more receptivity to deal with people than it does with books, right? So when we're learning the method side of the path, we're learning how to deal with our minds in relationship to others more than looking inside, which is just in relationship to ourselves. So to create a mind that can realize emptiness, that was really, I found that really helpful. His own experience, this was his experience he was talking about. He started learning about compassion. It opened up his mind.
And in addition to that, when I first met Venerable Children, I thought I'd met one of a kind. And then I met Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo, and then I thought I've met two of a kind. And then I went to India and Nepal, and I met some of Venerable Children's teachers, and I thought I've met a group of a kind. And so they're all talking the same way about this path that is so clearly laid out. And to see the quality of those minds in those people, they were joyful people, all of them, kind, wise, and they were all talking the same language about how we make progress. And that was, for me, very compelling. And then the teachers who come here in Geshe Tabke, they're part of this group of a kind too, where you can see how decades of experience transform the mind, and over lifetimes, I don't even, who knows with these people. But that was also very clear evidence that this path is really a viable, authentic path.
I'm curious if a real sub-question for you, or at least it was for me, is do I need to actually believe in awakening as a possibility before I ordain?
I hadn't thought about it in that context before this program. But yeah, I mean, you kind of have to buy into that.
Yes and no. Maybe I'll just share, because when I decided to ordain, I was convinced about rebirth. That much was clear, because I didn't grow up Buddhist, and I was like, I'm convinced that I'm going to have a future life, and it's going to be a very bad one. I'm in very serious trouble. That's really how I felt after my first EML, and just seeing the extent of the afflictions. I'm like, if I continue like this, it's a one-way ticket to hell, man. Like, we gotta get out. So that's where I went with, like, I need to do something different about my ethical conduct. But I wasn't even sure about renunciation and liberation. It's like, can I even do that? I don't know. I wrote to Venerable Children. I'm like, this is the best motivation I can come up with at this point. Like, what do you advise? Should I just wait? Because I don't see this bodhicitta thing happening soon. And she's like, just keep studying, just keep practicing, because I'm like, it's just really contrived. If you want me to say I'm doing this for all sentient beings, like, I'm not. I'm just gonna try to make sure I don't go to the lower realms right now. So she said, but get accustomed to it. So like Venerable Tarpa said, study, 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 and that's really helped. And I love the Chenrezig practice. That's kept me very connected. Because I studied in many other different traditions, so there was a lot of doubt, confusion. For a while, I was like, okay, the goal is stream entry, and I actually had my own little goal list. I'm like, these are apparently quantifiable things, right? If you can meditate for N hours, it means you have this. Yeah, I was like, okay, stream entry in this life. That's it. And that, as you study, you realize how small those ideas are. And yeah, so being in this tradition and the study that we do has really helped. So the point I want to make is you don't need to be like, yes, this is for Buddhahood. It's a thing we grow into, I think.
I mean, I was even just with the whole liberation part. I'm like, I don't know.
I do think, at least for me, in the larger term, the renunciation part is what got me here. It's like, oh my God, this is really samsara. The Buddha was telling the truth. The Buddha was telling the truth. If the Buddha was telling the truth about this, then I can pretty much believe the Buddha is telling the truth about everything else. But the logic, learning the steps, that someone actually can define step by step by step by step where it goes. It doesn't mean that I have tremendous confidence that I myself will get there anytime soon, but I know that someone has thought it out, someone has experienced it out, laid it out. It's a followable path. But the main thing I wanted to add here was that in the very first sentence, I think, in the Buddha meditation that Venerable Children has laid out, it says, imagine, how would it feel to be the qualities of infinite love, infinite compassion, yeah. Imagine how that would be. It's right there at the beginning of that practice. And using that, imagining that, how would it be? How big a mind would I have? How big a mind do I have just from even doing this one little sentence reflection for a minute? And then what would it truly be like if that's all that was in my mind? Somehow, maybe this just depends on different people's personalities and ways of being, but that capacity to become this, to imagine becoming this, how could I possibly imagine becoming this? I find that very fruitful.
When I first met Venerable Children, the first years I knew her, she always used this phrase, explore the possibility. That really worked for me. got to explore.
Like exploring monastic life.
We're very fortunate here at the Abbey that we have the opportunity to do long retreats in the winters. And so all year long we're serving, and then for 3 months we get to close the doors and really focus on our practice. And that, I know for me, doing a Bodhisattva retreat, a 3-month retreat, was a real game changer for me. It turned my mind. It's like, oh my gosh, there's a mess in here. I've got to clean this up. Not only seeing the mess, but also seeing what happens when you sit in retreat for 3 months, particularly doing a purification practice. So I think that's a great benefit that is hard to explain until you've had that experience. So, I invite you to come for a month in the winter and taste what it's like to sit and look at your mind for a month, and also be accumulating a lot of virtue without a lot of distraction. It's very helpful.
Venerables, when you arrived to move in with this community, or after you ordained, can you describe anything that came up for you in terms of like doubt or regret, or like when the honeymoon phase ended, what came up for you and how did you deal with that?
So I'm an introvert, and what was driving me crazy on some days is I needed to be alone. Leave me alone. But fortunately at that time we still had a lot of acres here, and so I could go out and explore about at least 275 acres in the first few years, and it was just wonderful. There's plenty of places, there's many, many ways to get alone here without removing yourself from the community. So that's a line that we all have to watch out for. But that was that. And as an introvert, I would always be wondering, well, why are these people all talking out loud? Every thought they have, they say it out loud. Why would you even say that? And that was another source of irritation. Like, couldn't you keep some of those thoughts to yourself? And then the person who's doing that all the time says they're an introvert. And it's like, what? You're an introvert? If you're an introvert, what does that make me? A weirdo. So that was another source of oh my God, I don't know. But, I had some other reasons for being here, and it was the renunciation thing, just seeing, yes, all those things, the 6 sufferings, the 8 sufferings, there's no question about that. I don't know how long I've got left in this life, but I think I can put up with extroverts and the so-called introverts. And there's plenty of forest out there. And I learned to run a chainsaw simply to get my mind focused off of these other things in Canada that were driving me crazy, like my parents who were falling apart. So I'll tell you, running a chainsaw really gets you focused. Otherwise, you cut your leg off. So there's a number of ways you can work with these things that drive you crazy, and fortunately we have this magnificent, authentic spiritual teacher here who can help you. And so don't miss that opportunity to go for help. So that's one thing.
We're just going to go down the line. This is a good question. We should. I didn't quite have that experience. And I think it's because I had a motivation for coming here that was outside of myself. And I leaned into that heavily for many years. I believed in the mission of the Abbey, and I wanted to help. And then when everything's, and I'm just immature, new in the Dharma, and having to deal with all these things, like living in community and having all these emotions while you're sitting there having breakfast. I can't believe I have to be around people. And, it's that was challenging. But I never really thought, that never propelled me to leave. And I think I always really leaned into that. And I made all these aspirational prayers, and I just, I was doing things in a way that kind of circumvented that, just luckily. And then it got a little bit bigger here. We had 8 people. And I remember saying to Venerable, it's getting kind of crowded here. And she said, well, you're just going to have to learn to be flexible. And so that was kind of a little bit of a speed bump. And then there was somebody who lived here who literally I got so angry with one time I packed my suitcases. I'm sure I packed my suitcases twice. One time I actually carried it out of my room. And then I felt so stupid that I went back in and hoped nobody saw me and unpacked it. That was me learning how to work with my anger. I fought with somebody here for about 3 years. And now we're quite close. But during the learning phase, it wasn't so pretty. I'd get really angry. And yeah, I had a time once when, before any of you lived here, where I was seeing all the dirt in my mind. I didn't want to leave here, but I remember Venerable was in India, just Simke and I were here. I was walking down the hill and I'm like, I don't want to live. I was really a mess. I just remember thinking that, and I'm like, I've never actually been suicidal, and I wasn't really suicidal. I just didn't want to live in that moment. And Venerable, I don't know if I was ordained yet, I can't remember, but I went and talked to Simke, and she said, you better write Venerable Chodron, which I did. And she said, go into the little cabin for a week and calm down. And she helped me learn, which has helped me tremendously, that the antidotes, I remember this letter she wrote back, the antidotes will not work when your mind is boiling like water. You need to get your mind calm. And this helped me a lot because my mind would get real roiled up. And if you think of like boiling water, you have to have it calm or you can't make the antidotes work. So I was really struggling. And I remember what got me out of that phase of my life here was learning about integrity and consideration for others. And that turned this whole problem I was having then, helped me a lot. But I never really had anything kind of in the way that you describe it. I've just had speed bumps and little smack yourself in the face events where you're being really stupid. But I haven't ever thought about leaving. Seriously. She's being the moderator.
Oh, okay. So you're talking about just the first few years, yeah? Right, yeah? Or just when you join. No, I mean, the main issue is what is the biggest affliction in your mind that you need to work with. Maybe that's how I see it. And you move here, you go through your preparation, you move here, and then of course it's where you just get to see your afflictions come up and how you need to work with them. I think in the first, I had a very what I consider a smooth, joyful anagarika period, but it was interesting, like a lot of things that it was just the opposite of what my lay life was though, so just getting used to, I know people think there are a lot of people here. I mean, I grew up in Asia where you're like knee to knee with people in a small apartment. So I was person number 10, and I was like, where is everybody? And I was one of the 2 youngest people. I'm like, I'm so used to moving with a cohort of 40 people the same age my whole life, in school. I was like, I'm alone. What am I supposed to, I'm supposed to think for myself? Like, where are the other 39 people doing the same study program that I can just lean on and not think for myself? So those were some just new things. And also, when you're the most junior person, you think everybody is your boss in some weird way. So I was like, I have 9 bosses. This is really not fun. So, but you just get to see this, the kind of mental, maybe it just made clear kind of the way I organized my universe as a layperson. And then I got to see it firsthand when I moved here in a very different context and to question do I still want to hold on to those mental frameworks and live that way? Yeah, so I think that was the anagarika period. It was actually harder after I got ordained, I think. And one reason I think it's because as an anagarika, you just do whatever you do, show up, My identity stuff really came in after I ordained. Like, oh, now I'm a nun who is responsible for these things. I'm supposed to show up for, you represent something now. You have this responsibility. and I became like this about it and made myself very miserable. I still do. Yeah. So it's all identity stuff. I was quite shocked to see it come right back like that. It's now you have a reputation. If you're anagarika A, B, C, you might leave. Who knows? Whatever. But now you are Venerable Thupten X, who does Y job, who represents the Abbey in Z way. It was very misery making. So yeah, that's something I still work with a lot.
What was your question?
Venerable, I asked after you initially moved here or when you first ordained, what came up for you in terms of doubts or regrets or I guess just afflictions about just the change in the situation, and how did you deal with that?
I ordained in India, and it wasn't an ideal situation in terms of, I mean, there parts of it were ideal, but other parts of it weren't, in that I wasn't accountable to anybody. I was a bit like a free agent. I did stay at FPMT Dharma centers, and there were some senior nuns there who required very little of us. And so in that way, in the first few years, I didn't really train my mind, and I regret that. And then I moved to a monastery that was set up very differently than this one. The emphasis was on the study program, which was wonderful. However, there wasn't as much emphasis on community. And what I found coming here is that I felt naked for the first few years because you have, all these mirrors around you, and yeah, there's nowhere to hide. And I wasn't used to that. And so it was a big confrontation to my ego, my identity. I also had developed a lot of pride as someone who had studied for many years. And so there were a number of years where that was getting hacked to pieces, mostly by Venerable. And, still working on that to some degree. So it's so important to have a container like this in the very beginning. And you've got that, and you've had that, and you'll continue to have that. So that's a bonus. But it doesn't mean that, your own ego won't spew up its own resistances. But the nice thing is that this community can hold whatever comes up for people. I appreciate that about Venerable, that there's really nothing punitive here, and there aren't any really hard consequences except your own karma. In a way, that's good because each person gets to work out in their own timing how they can settle here if they choose to stay. And that's helpful. And everyone has their own reverberations when they come here. It's just bound to happen, whether you're a layperson or you're coming in as an ordained person. I wouldn't change it for anything.
I don't know that there is a honeymoon period, honestly, and we don't come here for a honeymoon. Guaranteed, you will get smacked in the face by your own mind, your own karma. It will look like other people are smacking you in the face, but they're not. And we all go through it. And that's the beauty, actually, of coming into the community where everybody's been through it. Because generally speaking, we're all trying to hold each other. And the more we do our own practice, the more our capacity for holding each other. And we go crazy. If you're really attached, if one is really attached to like holding it together, then you're going to fall apart, period. And then we work through it. So that's just that. I will say for myself, I promised first of all, I didn't come here until I knew that this was actually absolutely positively the thing I was going to do. And even when I came for the exploratory year, I made myself promise, I would say, for 15 months, not 12, because that was too easy. 15 months, no matter what happened, I will not leave for 15 months. And by the time June, July, August, September, October, by the 5th month, when I made my request for ordination, I said to Venerable Children, I am requesting you right now for Vic Shuni ordination. I know I have to be an anagarika. I know I have to be a novice. But my request is for Vic Shuni ordination. Because by then, because I told you, I didn't come, but I did most of that kind of work outside. And I think that was helpful because, of course, I got smacked in the face right away too, with my own ego, really, my own self. And so it's really, my advice is less about what is it like when the honeymoon wears off, but am I willing to just come and see what ripens, because who knows, right? Prepare for that, I think.
Yeah, actually, that's, I think, really good advice. But also, it's just knowing that it's a process of purification, and you get to see your afflictions like full on. At least for me, it was like I'll deal with one each year or so. Like one, there's only so much I can do. It always felt like there was a blazing fire. After 5 years, it felt more like, okay, at least I'm holding the hose, okay? It's not like curled up in some corner. I relied on the schedule a lot. It's like no matter how I'm feeling, I'm just gonna follow the schedule. There was one whole year where I was like, wow, I'm so miserable and angry all the time, but I just need to do Vajrasattva practice, because otherwise Lama Zopa Rinpoche's life will become shorter. I told myself, you made the commitment, yeah, like don't shorten the guru's life, dude. Just show up, do your practice, follow the schedule, and that helped me to get through just about everything, I think. Because it's all coming from your mind. I had a mantra every year. Whatever practice mantra it was. This is just your mind. This is just your mind. What am I doing here? What am I doing here? What am I doing here? It's a good thing to reflect on.
As in, what's my purpose?
Yeah, no, different tones. It was a whole 1 year. Some days it was, what am I doing here? Wow. Some days it was, what am I doing here? So, you sit with that.
That face deserves a microphone.
Venerable Chini, I was wondering if you could elaborate on why your request to Venerable Children was Vic Shuni ordination from the very outset. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, because I had to convince myself that this was truly the path for me. Coming to test it out wasn't an option for me. I was either going to do it or I was not going to do it. That was it. And I was on the fence for a long time. For a lot of reasons. I loved the work I did. I didn't really want to give it up. I loved the context of, I loved my life, basically. And I was still full of dukkha. And I knew that I was going to fall apart. I know that because you meditate on that. And it already had a few times, and I put it back together, and it fell apart again, and like blah, blah, blah. So for me, that homework of what generally gets done in a exploratory way. Well, you were clear. No, you weren't clear yet until you got here. But anyway, I did the homework before, so that by the time I really was here, I was very, very clear that if I'm doing this, this is it for the rest of my life, and I'm going all the way. So it was that. It's not like I had any superior anything. I just did my work outside more.
You have more faith than I do, and I noticed this in the Carmelite nuns. It's the thing about having faith, because I can remember that the first 3 years I lived here as a nun, the first 3 years I was in robes, I was like, well, if the Abbey didn't exist, I don't think I'd be in robes. And I had to be honest with myself and say that to myself. Like, I hadn't met many nuns or monks or anyone. I didn't want to go running around India. I just wasn't interested in any of that. None of it was appealing to me. But then that kind of conviction, as I learned more about what existed in the Buddhist world and just learned more about monastic life, then I was like, no, if the Abbey wasn't here, I would continue this. But it literally was 3 years of being ordained before I could say that to myself. I remember thinking, like, I don't think I'm supposed to be thinking this, but this is what I feel. And I just have to be honest to myself, like, if this place wasn't here, I wouldn't be doing this, But now I don't feel that way at all. I'd find a way. So, we don't have to have it all there on day one. It's a progress. Plants take time to grow.
Venerable Choni, you in your teaching and Venerable Chodron and her teachings have
gave me like so many questions to ask myself, and I heard loud and clear I need to meditate more on the middle scope. However, I do have a question. What were other things for each of you that help you guys get off the fence?
The 14 Lamrim CDs. Before I moved here, I listened to those and did those reflections. So basically, that's what did it for me.
Still thinking.
I was a student of Venerable's in Seattle from 95 to 99, and she would give us homework. She'd give a teaching, and then she'd give us homework, and we'd go home, and I never did my homework. Venerable Simke always did her homework. So it wasn't until 1998 when 13 of us went and did a 3-month Vajrasattva retreat. And during that retreat, I finally had the opportunity to sit and do some Lamrim, serious Lamrim meditation. There was a train track not far from the retreat center, and so every time I heard the train whistle, I'd think, that's death, death's coming. And, meditating a lot on death, I finally had a chance to, it hit me, like, oh, this is going to happen. I just lost my train of thought. What was your question? How did you get off? Oh, yeah. So for me, it was the Vajrasattva retreat that I didn't have any intention of shifting from my lay life at that point, but it was looking at my mind for 3 months when maybe about 3 or 4 months after that retreat, sitting at home, I just started having these thoughts like, I think I want to ordain. What? It really took my breath away. But the thought kept coming back. And what I have heard other people say is that we have an interest in ordaining because we've been happy as monastics in previous lives. And that really resonated for me. I never regretted ordination. I haven't regretted taking ordination for one moment. And that doesn't mean it's been easy. It's been a lot of hard spots. But for me, it's just like, of course, this is what I needed to do with the second half of my life.
So I had the complication of having 2 parents in Canada who both within a year developed dementia. So my sister was trying to handle this, and our brother couldn't handle it, so he stepped out of the picture. And so I decided at one point that I would go back and I would take care of them. And it would be probably possible if it was one parent, but by the time I got back there, it was both of them. And it absolutely wore me out on all levels. And I could see that what Venerable had told me right at the beginning when I was struggling with this was, she said something to the effect of, well, how are you going to help your parents when you're in hell? So that did not leave my mind, as you can imagine. And I had to go through the experience of falling apart and dropping down to about 84 pounds and being absolutely fried, beyond fried, to see that I could not help them. I did it.
I'll give Venerable Shuni some credit for how you got me off the fence. So we've talked about this at the meal table, but I had a contract to fulfill with the Singapore government, and I had the aspiration to ordain when I started work. And like Venerable Seppel said, I really think it's just a prayer made in the past life, And that's what other people told me too. They're like, you have these feelings, you have prayers, but you have to study, or this has to be a logical decision that you come to with conviction. That's the kind of advice I got, because when those prayers first ripened, it felt like, oh, I have to do this now, like, how am I going to quit my job overnight? I have this contract. And the prayers I used to make was, it's too late for me to ordain. I will do it in my next life. But I was 24 at the time. You know what I mean? So clearly some kind of hangover, yeah? It's like, no, it's not too late. You can do it. So I was celibate for 4 years, had all this time to explore, and then I met Buddha Boy, like a really nice Buddhist man, who also came with me to Venerable Children's talks, and then she saw us and was like, okay, because she knew I was exploring ordination. So the turning point was Venerable Shuni one day writing to me and saying, Venerable Children is going to do a pilgrimage, or she's been invited to Indonesia for the first time. Do you want to go help? And I thought, sure, I love Indonesia. I'll go on holiday with my boyfriend. We're going to go surfing. Then I'll go help Venerable Children. So I did that. Then we went, but that was like just being up close with her every day was like, oh, it was just a huge wake-up call for me. And for me, it was like I saw she was the real deal. I'm so used to, from theater or government, like people are one way in public and another way backstage, yeah? And I was like, here is someone who's actually completely authentic all the time. That just blew my mind. And she was constantly benefiting people, and suddenly my mind just got clear for that small window, and I thought, oh, if I marry this man and I don't explore monastic life before that, I'm going to regret this for the rest of my life. So on that trip, at the end of the pilgrimage tour, I bought my air ticket to the Abbey. And then I went back and told the boyfriend, sorry, we're breaking up now. It was really hard. But I just knew myself very deeply, like this is the window. And if you don't, and my mind was just so clear all of a sudden. It was so cloudy before that. I just thought, if I don't do this now when there's clarity, the door is going to close. And, it's going to be a decision you make that has ramifications for decades. Yeah, so I'm glad I jumped when the window was open. Or I would be married or divorced right now with 2 children. Yeah.
I guess I'm just trying to think about the whole process. I also wonder what kind of karma I had that I was so resistant. I was really resistant. And there were a lot of reasons that that didn't actually make sense for me, but I also definitely thought I was too old. Because this first batch of us were too old, right? We were all over 50 when we ordained. So that was a piece of it, is, okay, what is the rest of your life about? Come on. I mean, that was a very big question for me. But I think the bottom line, because it wasn't important. I remember the moment that it came clear. I'd been thinking, I'm going to do it, I'm not going to do it, Venerable, leave me alone, please don't mention it. I mean, Nerea would call me up. I would invite Venerable to lunch. I lived in Coeur d'Alene. I would offer her pizza. I would take her back. Nerea would call up and say, Venerable wants to know, why aren't you ordained? I mean, Venerable not say her caller. Nerea's like what? She's like nagging me on it wasn't Venerable sending Nerea for that phone call, but it was just a harassment. But what there was a retreat at Cloud Mountain. Right? I'm in business with my best friend. We're having a good time. Susan was also on this retreat, but I've been meditating on the middle scope. I would come up here whenever I could. As I've told somebody else, I felt like I was self-employed. I could be the best possible lay practitioner and really help Venerable Children, but if you're self-employed and you're on retreat, you don't make a dime. So my theory wasn't working. And in this retreat, she was teaching on, I don't remember exactly what it was, but then what the topic of the whole retreat was, but she started teaching on the Lama Tsongkhapa's description of the water wheel, of samsara, and how we're the bucket in a well, and samsara, you go down, and you bang on the walls all the way down, and it's so very hard to get back up. And the another analogy is that you are completely, as the bucket, completely controlled by the rope that is pulling you up and down. You have no control over that whatsoever. And banging against the wall. And so the analogy, there's 8 points, chung, 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 chung. And by the time we got to that, somehow we got to the end of that 8 point, and I just started weeping in the retreat. I might do it again. It's like, oh my God, this is so true. What am I doing? And how much time do I have? And here is my teacher standing there with the door wide open saying, come on. When she also said, and I'm going to turn the age limit to 50 really soon. That lit me up. Yeah, so it was really that. Yeah, she cranked the heat up a little bit, but yeah. So I had a lot of help to get here, but that middle scope, That's why I'm always recommending it. Those meditations were super powerful, and that teaching nailed me so much so. I mean, I'm like crying in the session, and Susan hears me crying, and she starts crying because she knows I'm about to leave the business. And yeah.
Actually, I don't think I answered the question. How I got here was meditating on the Lam Rim, but making the decision to ordain, I actually never was really on the fence. And I think it's because I was really in the mind of just exploring. I had to make such a big decision to come here. And I had to wait a year because both of my Tibetan teachers independently told me to wait. So I waited a year. And then when I did get here, some things really helped me. One is I know myself in the way of how I make decisions. I like to go slowly. I like to think things through. And I like to be moving towards something. When I look at the big decisions I've made in my life, I've never moved away from something. I've always moved towards something. And the thing that really impacted me that way here was a couple things. One, I remember reading before I came here that Thich Nhat Hanh's age limit was 27. And I was like, if I'm going to do this, I better get there soon. I had that thought. And then I remember the thing that made it hard for me to move here was I realized that I had this attachment about fending for myself by earning for myself in the world. And I had one person who gave me good advice of all the people I talked to before I left Seattle. And she said, she made me aware of what they call the golden handcuffs, which is when you have all this financial, supposed financial security, and you have, I was buying a house, I had a job, I had a 401k, I finally had enough money, I was house poor, but I was stable. And I realized these are the golden handcuffs. And she gave me really good advice. She had left her whole career once with her husband for 3 months. They bought a sheep farm. They never regretted it. She said, you'll never regret it. If you stay there 3 months, you'll never regret it. She went back. She didn't want a sheep farm, but she did it. And so she didn't let fear get in her way. And I've never let fear get in my way to do things. And I had talked to Venerable, I'd come up 10 times the year before. And when I was talking to her, I realized I'd be a fool not to try this. So maybe the big decision was coming here. But then when I was here, the thing that put me kind of over was having models. When those 4 Chinese bhikshunis came, the first time we met them, oh my God, it was amazing to me. I saw something I had never seen before. I saw people that were humble and powerful and worthy. Yeah, it was really, there was something to this, and everybody who was here then remembers that. So yeah, it was moving towards something, and that's kind of, if you watch in your life, how do you make your big decisions, that can help you to figure out how you're going to make this one or not make this one, because I see a pattern in myself of how I make decisions.
Actually, two more things about this. One, that just reminds me, even after I moved here, I was still on the fence. So that I got here was one thing, but I was still on the fence. But it was the second time the Bhikshunis came for Venerable Semke's ordination, when I finally saw, oh, this isn't about me against the world trying to overcome my afflictions. This is about community. This is about these nuns kind of moving in one flow, even though they were from different temples. Because we had, in the early days, we had to have the Taiwanese nuns come ordain us. We didn't have enough nuns to do that. So it was seeing that the community was the key. And then I say, this I can do. If it's not just about me trying to become venerable children, that's impossible. I can't. But that, I see, it can be done. The other thing that was helpful is I interviewed every single nun that came here. How'd you get here? What was your story? What was your background? And the stories were all super helpful. So I think if people like stories, that's also a useful way to get some information. And one of those nuns, too, she talked about how she had gotten ordained, and then she said, she almost left, and then she said, I want to say one more thing. She said, often I've seen people with a clear intent, and they kept putting it off, They had all the conditions, but something else held up. But she said, that window doesn't stay open. It doesn't stay open. You have to watch. If you have all the conditions, pay attention, because that's a setting for, because it closes.
And the other thing is, I read a quote by Atisha. Sorry. Atisha talked, and I witnessed this here, people who are on the fence. He talked about this, and I put this quote up on the refrigerator. You don't have the benefits of either if you're on the fence. You don't have the benefits of lay life, and you don't have the benefits of monastic life. And that was really clear to me watching people who visited here, so I kind of didn't go that route. Being on the fence, you don't have anything. It's better to do one or the other, then you have the benefits.
Venerable Tarpa, you mentioned always move towards something and the way that you make decisions, and I really feel identified with that. And a question that I ask myself now that I'm on the fence is, I'm in this awkward period between one point and the other that I don't know how to move towards something. Because I hear people mentioning 3-month retreats, but my concern isn't the 3-month retreat. My concern is the remaining 9 months of the year. What do I do? Right? Like, how do I finance this exploration period? How do I continue my practice? Because after this, I have to return to my life where I have to pay rent, where I have to own stuff, where I have to, and my concern is getting quickly sucked back into that. And so how can I give myself the space to explore and move towards something in the time in between? You know, those.
What is the time between?
You know, so if you do a month retreat and then you do another retreat and then you do another retreat, there's these periods of time in between where you just go back to your life. In that time, what do I do?
Well, I would say that for my experience, I had come here 10 times. I had asked every question. I had explored it fully, and I got to a place where it's like, I just need to experience this. I have no idea. I've never lived like this before, and I don't hardly know. I knew like 1 or 2 monastics. I'm like, I just need to experience this, and the decision will make itself. And so, but in between, when I was doing the back and forth thing, to me, when anyone talks to me about ordination, I think your Dharma practice will lead you that way. Wherever you are, no matter what your conditions are, you have to focus on your practice. You can't have like, if only this. If you have the people who come here and have that mind of if only, they never do it. Anyone who comes here and says that, I'm like, they're not going to do it, because you're never going to have if only. You have to just do. Whatever the conditions are, you practice, and your practice will lead you to a solution. To me, the question isn't should I ordain or not. The question is, what am I doing with my Dharma practice? I never talk to people about ordination. I always talk to them about their practice. The practice will answer the question. That's my belief. And so, and then when you don't know, and the way you proposed this at first, I was like, you just have to go live it and find out. It's like what my friend told me. You just have to go do it, and then you'll see. And you'll never regret it. You just take a certain period of time out of your life if you choose to. Like, I just sold everything. It took me a year to, because my teacher said, wait. And I had to get rid of a house, and I had to paint it all first, and everybody was here, and I was home listening to the Lamrim CDs, painting my house and getting it ready for sale, trying to sell it on April Fool's Day, but it was a month late. You just practice. You just say focus on that, but then you have to just live it and see. You can't know what the answer is going to be until you put yourself in the situation. You know, you research it out. It's like you're buying a car, you know, or anything. You research it out, and then you just have to, like, take the leap, as Venerable would say. At some point, you have to take the leap. And some people, like her, will take a big leap. Me, I am not her. I take smaller leaps. I just jump a little bit. My nickname, my email is Jumping and Leaping. I don't leap really far. I just, you know, and then you'll see it, and it will answer itself. And it might be, the answer might be like it is for a lot of people. Some people, this won't be the place. This won't be the teacher. But they end up being monastic. And some people find out, one guy took Anagarika here, and he figured out he wasn't Buddhist. I consider that a success. That was a success. He had spent 10 years studying on his own in Florida. He came here, took Anagarika. We had all these interesting debates about rebirth and this and that, and he came down completely the opposite. And he figured out that he wasn't Buddhist. That is a success. He discerned. Anagarika is a time of discernment. I don't know. I hope I answered your question.
I do think there's a misconception. If you spend 3 months in retreat, you're not going to go back to your life. You may go back to the same job. You may go back to the same apartment, but you are not going back to the same life. If you've done retreat that's actually touched your heart and touched your mind, you will go back and live the Dharma more deeply. So it evolves that way. It's not like we check out and then we go right back to where we were. It's not how it works. So that too is part of the of letting it unfold, so that it unfolds to the point where you do leap, right? But your mind is constantly changing if you're in your practice, constantly.
I wanted to add that, you know, I had 6 years of contract with the Singapore government that I just couldn't pay off. It was worth $500,000. So, but I had this aspiration to ordain. And I just felt that even just living as a layperson with the aspiration to ordain was really beneficial and helpful, especially in the early years of my work life. It just clarified all my priorities. It helped me to keep good ethical conduct in very difficult work situations. You know, and I created a lot of virtue, I think, you know, because you're just not doing what, you know, if my goal were to get ahead in my career and step on other people and whatever, I would have done something very different with my time, right? Whereas I was focused on, I hope to ordain someday. I'm not here to fight with anyone. I'm here to try and be of benefit. Then my work life just unfolded in a totally different way. And I'm very happy with how those years went. Yeah, so at the end of that, I was like, even if I didn't ordain, this motivation protected me and was incredibly helpful. I would be happy even if I didn't ordain at that time. I mean, you know, just mentally, I thought that to myself, as I didn't think in terms of I've wasted all this time pursuing a monastic aspiration, not knowing if it would come to fruition. Does that make sense? Yeah, I was glad to have lived that period of my lay life with the monastic aspiration, not knowing if it would bear fruit or not.
Okay, my question for Venerable Sapo. 14 years study is very impressive. It's kind of a, also I was started to learn the FPMT program a little bit. Is it necessary to jump into monastic life before get some study, get some foundation? Because 14 years is long. So I want to give some thoughts or advice about that. Should I do that also?
Monastic life is a really good container because it simplifies your life. And so whatever you do, you will have like more focus, more time, more energy for what you really want to do. In a way, if I had been in this community doing that study program, to me that would be ideal. But you know, I think if we don't have the container that really helps us to work with our minds and get some basis of stability with the afflictions, then no matter how much study you have, is it going to be that beneficial? So I don't know. Every person is different. You have to check for yourself. But what I've seen is that there aren't many really conducive conditions that will support all of that all at once. So I think to get the ethics, you know, there is a progression: ethics, concentration, wisdom. If we get the ethics foundation set before we start something really intensive like a study program that's going to push you in different ways, you'll be better off.
I have like a lot of attachment to connecting with people, and it certainly clouds my motivation for helping people. But I was wondering how you all have dealt with kind of that, attachment to connections with people. Like this, we come from friendships and all sorts of different ways, coworkers and people that we kind of, could really become a part of our life, I guess, and maybe get tied up in our identity. And I was wondering how you relate to that in this environment where you are living around a bunch of the same people daily, and you're also meeting a whole lot of people that you may have a deep connection with and then may never see again. I was wondering about that.
If your aspiration is to connect with people, there are endless opportunities here. Endless. And so, as far as your friends that you have out there, as you continue to grow in your Dharma, you will notice that you're growing in different directions. And that doesn't mean you cut off those people at all, but you just see that, everyone is going in their own direction, and you can still keep that warmth in your heart for those people. And maybe you can invite them here too. But at a certain point you see that, yep, they're on that path, and I'm pursuing this path, and I love these people, and I can, I don't have to sever these friendships at all, but you'll just notice that, over time, things just go further apart. And yes, you'll feel maybe some sadness at first when people come and go, but you get used to that come and go. And I think as you grow in your Dharma practice, you'll see that it's more important to have this mind that is wanting to be of benefit to other people as much as we can, as much as I can, and just enjoy them for the time that they're here. And then, it's a good practice in letting go of our attachment, and it's much more, it's a much nicer relationship with people when there's not this going on.
I don't know what's true for you, but I think for many of us, we walk around feeling like there's a hole in us and that we fill up with other people and being validated by other people. And that's just part of the process of learning to do that for ourselves and learning to really rely on our motivations rather than getting something externally to fill that loneliness or that hole or that need for closeness. It's surprising how for instance, when we do the sharing in the Dharma Day and we have those discussion groups, sometimes those can be so nourishing and so intimate. Or the Monday night class, just hearing people share their process about how the Dharma's working in their lives, it's just such a privilege. But those things are, those feelings that get stimulated are ephemeral, they're impermanent, they don't last. That's not what we're chasing. We're really looking for that stability within ourselves, and generating that ourselves. So it doesn't happen overnight. That'll be a process, and it might be a painful one, but it just kind of happens organically too, I think, as you hear more and more about the downfalls of attachment, and really thinking about who am I, what is my identity, where do I get my identity from.
Yeah, and I think that's one great benefit of living in community too, because I feel like I really had to rethink, re-experience what friendship is all about and what love and compassion really are about. It's not some abstract thing with people living across the ocean. It's the person sitting right across from you. It's your roommate that you are just not getting along with. And you're both ordained. You both want to get awakened and you hate each other's guts. What are we going to do about this? We're going to help each other. It becomes very real. And it helped me to see all the pollution that had come with all my lay friendships. Immediately once I moved here, there are certain people you are attracted to because they're just the kind of person who was always your best friend. And I'm like, do we really want to do this all over again as a monastic? You know, like, and a big wake-up call for me was I was very good friends with one anagarika, and they left. I was heartbroken. Like, we were best friends. I'm like, oh, you know, this is the thing you've hallucinated about again and again and again. How many times do you want to do this to yourself? Same thing at one other nun. She was my best friend. My age, you know who it was. And we fought. What? Yeah, so going through that and then really seeing what friendship really means and experiencing that from everyone in the community, that the friendship is about people who help you with your afflictions. Spiritual friendship, yeah, it's so precious and it has nothing of that kind of sticky, gross weirdness. And sometimes it's people being completely honest with you and telling you things you don't want to hear, but are helpful, are incredibly helpful. So, and these days, it's interesting now that I've been ordained a while, I'll meet other monastics or we work together. It's like we don't need to get into any personal stuff, but we are on the same page. You know, with whether even the monastics I met recently or the ones from Taiwan, it's like we're working to the same goal. It's very simple, very clean, clear, and we support each other. But I don't need to know your whole life history and your emotional issues and no. Yeah, it's a very different kind of. But the connection's very deep, is what I feel. You know, like without us having to talk too much. Yeah.
Saves a lot of time. Yes, clean.
I remember saying to you before that Venerable Jigme and I had talked about this, that feeling of a hole in your heart. I used to have that. I don't have that anymore. And I was trying to figure out what changed in that. And I think that some things that maybe made that change were I learned things about myself that I didn't know before. Like I never knew that I had any self-hatred. I never would have used those words. And I found that in my mind. And I think it's something along the lines of a kind of really seeing yourself honestly and accepting yourself. Like I feel much more comfortable in my own skin. You know, it's like even trying to keep up with this schedule. I'm like, it's hard for me. You know, like I'm not built like some of the people here. I'm just not that. And I never could keep up with Venerable Simcare, Venerable Children when there were 3 of us here. So I knew from early on that couldn't be the thing, right? And so I got really comfortable with just keep trying. Try until I really know I can't do something. And so for me, that was one of the things around self-acceptance, but it can come in a lot of different ways for people. I think most people here learn that about themselves. You know, like the people I live with here who've known me for a while, they've seen me at my best. They've seen me at my worst. And we've seen me at my worst, and they see me at my best. And we still get along. We still care for each other. We have hard times. We have good times. Everything happens. And I think that kind of somewhere in there, there's a kind of level of, I mean, the way I think the community works is everyone trusts that people are trying. People are practicing. They're doing what they can. Some things come really easy for some people. The same thing can be very difficult for another person. And both people, you know, one person doesn't have to try very hard to accomplish something. Another person has to work at it. So there's a lot of respect that comes for that. And I actually think that's one of the issues that gets solved in this equation is that you learn how you've had a lack of respect. You have people that you're friends with. But what about those other people? We really aren't very different. When you live with people who you wouldn't have been friends with, is what Venerable says. Actually, we are so much the same. I mean, that becomes so apparent that like the idea of not wanting to be connected with another person seems kind of ludicrous to me at this point. Like, why wouldn't you? What would they have to do? Like, what do they have to do? They have to be this perfect that I'm going to want to connect with them? I mean, this stuff just has to fall away. It's just, you see, it's just so ridiculous. All those kind of learnings take that attachment to whatever it is, and that thing goes. Ask Venerable Jigme. It left for her. Those are the things that come to mind that were things that I must have learned that made me not have that experience anymore.
I also find for myself, and I don't know if this is true for everybody, but I can't stand to live in a community if I can't love everybody. I may not always like everybody. I have to go through those phases, and I have to be really watchful that I don't lose the aspiration to love them in a very clean, clear way. I'm not talking about attachment. But it doesn't make any sense to me at all to live with people and not be able to love them. And so that's been a huge exercise, and I have had to put a lot of energy into it sometimes. But as far as that sort of satisfying the need, I mean, the same time that I've been working on that same kind of craving, it replaces that totally in a very, very different way. And it's taken years and years and years, and it will probably take the rest of my life, and I'll keep doing it, doing it, doing it. But it is a practice that we can use, anyway, that I think is extremely, way healthier. Oh my God. Yeah, but also then you can extend it with other people, and then it's not that clinging. Okay, they come, they go. It's okay. It's okay. Because it's not about them and it's not about me, actually. It's just about having this wish for them to be happy. That's it.
When I was moving away from Seattle and going to India, there was one moment where I was lamenting that I was leaving all my friends, and Venerable Children said, "Don't worry, you'll make new ones." And it's really true. If you think back, who were my friends 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago? They've changed a lot, I'll bet. And that will just keep happening. So maybe that's helpful to think about impermanence.
Venerables, I have a story that I would like you to reflect back with the knowledge you have about monastic life. Because probably it's part of my culture and my upbringing, how I came to be, like maybe my identities and what I saw. So the first thing is that my contact with spirituality came through a teacher who is a lay person. He's married, have a family. But this person for me is a saint. Like this person modeled profound ethical conduct. No rebirth. He didn't speak about this. He doesn't have the Buddhist worldview. But he modeled these values that are about renunciation, about cherishing the others, bodhicitta. He didn't name these things, but I learned that. And because he's a lay person and he's married and have a family, and he did this community, 40 people have been in this group. It's a theater group, but it's kind of like a musical theater group. It's not like normal theater, a show. He's into something else. These people are real. They are a community. They live together in the mountains in Venezuela. I don't live there because I left my country in 2013. The economy was very hard. Samsara is real. I see how suffering happened. But I also think like, well, can I be like my teacher? Maybe that's a mistake to compare myself to somebody. Like, can I be like my teacher? Because he is for me the person that models how I understand that you could live ethical conduct and be in service and have a family, and all of these values that seem to be separated in monastic life. Like you are celibate, you are not doing this thing of family, forget about it. You will find new friends in the past. But don't get too entangled. Yeah, at this point he's in that place, but he shares his family like something sacred, like. And I think like, wow, it's very hard for me to just say, well, my teacher Juan, he didn't understand the Buddha, because this man is profoundly wise, and I don't have enough. I feel like I am like, but you know what? You don't understand the Buddha. So in order for me to renounce my relationship with that teacher, whoa, I don't know what I need to understand, but it's very hard because this person modeled for me profound values of how to be a human being, basically. He didn't speak about enlightenment, but he he just spoke about how we can stop our afflictions and become just something just more useful for all of us, all of life. So that's one thing. The other one is indigenous people. So getting closer to indigenous people allowed me to see that somehow they carry this understanding that we can live in harmony. And their communities were integrated in such a way that they have a lot of collaboration and contribution for the well-being of all of them. They are not thinking in bodhicitta, like in the well-being of all. They are kind of like our community, this is who we are, but they have these codes of respect and a profound sense of gratitude. Like they live with the respect and dignity of human beings. So I think I have maybe a lack, as I hear myself, is in this worldview of Buddhism. That's like where I'm like, oh my gosh, because I understand that humans have to have a similar code of ethic. I think what Venerable Chodron was saying, don't go and talk to people outside that they don't, they are not into Buddhism. Yeah, but Catholicism is wrong here. Or, yes, this don't. Just speak about the things that are common to all of us. And I wonder if I have to, and nobody's obligating me, of course, but I just have an enormous spiritual urgency, and that's why I'm here in this room with all of you, because this is obligating me, this spiritual urgency to answer questions that I am like, well, but how I answer that? I'm taking a view, like, I'm going to take the Buddhist view. It feels weird. It's like, but who was the Buddha? Why I need to trust this person? I read the suttas and I'm like, this makes sense. These teachings make sense. But then I have my teacher, Juan, who has not spoke about suttas, but he's like, wow, so brilliant. And I'm like, maybe that's the solution. But I don't have his karma. That's also important to say. Like, I don't know who was this person before. Like, why he's like enlightened. Like, I don't know. But I am not that one. So, yeah, all of that. If you can reflect anything or just, that would be helpful.
So I would definitely not be here or in robes without having met Venerable Children. No question. I went to India and Nepal for a year. I took a year off of my teaching career, and I saw many Western monastics, and I saw how hard it was for them. And many of them were in Dharma centers, and they're kind of alone. Their teacher was probably Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and before that, Lama Yeshe. But they're in very difficult situations where they weren't getting training. So first and foremost, important for me was somehow, I must have made a lot of prayers in the past, but I met this authentic spiritual teacher that I connected with on day one. No question. Like, I didn't have to look further after day one, which was way back in 1996. But, I drove back to Canada and continued on with my life, and it took a long time to get me here, for sure. But right from day one, I knew that there was going to be nobody else. I mean, I would meet other teachers, but this was the one who was going to, work for this crazy mind. So I think one piece of advice I would give is you have to do a search for a spiritual teacher, and they need to be authentic. And if you're not sure about, it seems like you have some tremendous faith in this person, which is great. And in Volume 2 of the Library of Wisdom and Compassion, His Holiness and Venerable Children talk about what to look for in an authentic spiritual teacher. That is very, very helpful. Now, that volume wasn't written when I bumped into Venerable Children, so some other good karma ripened. I had no idea, what an authentic spiritual teacher was, but I knew I wanted to know what she knew, and there was this, connection that was beyond words. So I think you need to be more investigating and checking out this tradition and the tradition that your teacher's in, and just really take the time to investigate people carefully and look for these qualities that are mentioned.
In that they say it can take 12 years to decide on a teacher. 12 years. So it's not a quick process necessarily in that teaching that she's referencing. So the thing that came to mind when I was listening to, or a couple of things. One is you talked about a community. I didn't hear who it was, but Venerable Losang used to live in a community too, and we've known other people who have lived in communities. And communities can function quite beautifully if they have a lot of shared values and certain things in harmony. And in our tradition, we have these 6 harmonies that make the monastic tradition work. And that if we didn't have these 6 harmonies, we probably wouldn't be living in harmony. And I don't think they have to be, they don't have to be Buddhist, but if there's certain things come together, then I think a community can be in harmony. And then with a teacher who has such a profound impact on you, I think that's beautiful. I don't think a person has to be monastic to be a teacher. My 2 teachers are not monastics. I have 3 main teachers, and 2 of them are not monastics. So I don't think it has to be it's do they have the qualities? And then do they have a path? That's the other thing. Like, you can meet people who have a lot of qualities, but can they teach you a path so that you can acquire those qualities? And then that's the thing I think if a person's kind of anything like the people in this room, why we like the Lam Rim is because the Lam Rim tells you what's so great about the Lam Rim. It helps you to understand where the teachings fall together. I spent my first 3 years of seriously practicing, although I'd meditated from the time I was a teenager. I was like a closet Buddhist reading books. But when I finally in 2000 went to a center, decided to have anything to do with organized religion, I spent 3 years trying to figure out what is the beginning of this path. I mean, like, I couldn't figure it out. And then finally reading the Lam Rim and understanding that, all the Buddhist teachings, you understand where they fit for any particular person at a particular time. The path is very important. The path, a teacher is great, but a path is what we need. We need to develop qualities in our mind. And so if a person can help you develop the qualities in your mind that will get to what your goals are, they can be a teacher, potentially. I mean, depends what your goals are. That's the other thing. What are your goals? What are your goals? When I was young and teaching myself how to meditate and reading these books, and I didn't know anything much about all this, I was just actually trying to feel a little better, I think, and calm myself down. And I learned some things from books that helped me. I don't think I really understood what meditation was till decades later. Like, what's the purpose or anything? I never thought about it. The era was that there weren't many books, and there wasn't my karma wasn't to meet the first teachers around, and so I didn't really know what I was doing. And it wasn't until later that I figured out, what am I trying to do with meditation? One of my teacher's uncles, I read this book, and it's like, whoa, what am I trying to do with meditation? And what are going to be the results? And I've actually literally met people working in the prisons who don't have instruction in meditation, and they're not, you can get in trouble with meditation. You need correct instruction to not have problems. Because I did a lot on my own, I did run into some problems, and I had to work my way out of those, and luckily I did, but I had some help. But you need proper instruction on this path, all the way to full awakening. Venerable Chodron asked one of her teachers that once, Geshe Tekchok. She asked him, how long do you need a teacher? He said, to full awakening. So in this tradition, because of our goal, this is why I want to get back to, what is the path? What are you trying to do with your spiritual life? You have to this will take a long time, but you have to discern, what am I trying to do with my spiritual life? And that will help you to figure out what path you might want to take and who might be a teacher who can teach you that path. Because some people might have qualities, but they might not be able to articulate them, or they might not, can you learn from them? There's a lot of ways to look at this. I don't have any interest in anyone becoming a Buddhist. I just want to say this. I have an interest in people suffering less. nobody wants to suffer, and people come here for all different reasons. We have a lot of friends who aren't Buddhists, so it's not about becoming a Buddhist for me, why I'm talking to you. I'm just saying these are the kind of questions I would look at. Like, it's not just about that person. It's not just about the harmony in the community. The path is your mind. What am I doing with my mind? How we change our mind is the practice. And so it depends on what your goals are. What do you want to do with your practice? Like if I just want to be calm, I don't have to do all these things to just be calm. If I want to not be a jerk, I have to add a few other things into the mix. If I want to be able to realize certain things that we purport in Buddhism, I have to do other things. I mean, it's all kind of laid out there. That's why we tend to like this tradition, because it's laid out there. And the more you study it, you can... when you read Lama Tsongkhapa, he's always saying, like, if you have a soft copy of his book, look up the word faith. Look how many times faith comes up. I have to have faith in a precious human life. I have to have faith in this. I have to have faith in that. All of these things we are trying to make our minds into because we have a goal. So the teacher is the one who teaches you the path to a goal. That's what I have to say.
I also want to add, Maybell, that His Holiness, when he taught in the United States, I don't know if this came up in Europe, probably too, he didn't do this the first few teachings I attended, but soon thereafter, he started to say at almost every teaching, generally, I recommend that people stay with the spiritual tradition that they grow up in, because it's confusing. It can be confusing for them. That different religions are developed for different minds and different people, and they are all beneficial for people, certain people. And then I always was a little bit relieved when he came to the end of that explanation about the value of people really honoring the tradition that they grew up in. And he says, and if you find that tradition does not work for you and Buddhism is a practice for you, then of course we welcome you. He also always says, take what you can use in your life and in your spiritual life. And that's the whole point, as Venerable Tarpa was saying, that what's useful does not mean that you have to become a Buddhist in order to use Buddhist ideas or Buddhist principles. So it's not like you have to pick the Buddha. I mean, you do have to pick the Buddha if you want to be a Buddhist monastic. That you do. But there's a great deal of spiritual exploration that can happen in there that can honor the culture that we came from, and look at where that fits in terms of our spiritual pursuits. And yeah, I think that's super helpful to just hold in mind. It's not like Buddhism is the best. It is for those of us who have chosen it, but is it the best for the planet? Well, all kinds of spiritual paths have benefited people. And so Venerable Tarp is right. What's the goal? What are we looking for? And that requires some thought.
I wanted to add that I don't feel you need to, quote, renounce your teacher, whatever that might mean, because I have a lot of role models who are of different faiths or who embody qualities or taught me really important things in my life. One of whom was a theater practitioner who created a community in Singapore that I love very much. So you appreciate those people. But yeah, same thing as I study or practice, I see they don't present a path that to me is complete or to full awakening. That's one piece. But also just the word renouncing a teacher, I was like, oh, because the refuge is not the teacher. You absolutely cannot ordain just because of one person. When they die, you will disrobe. I was so shocked when I heard this the first time, like, oh, when Lama Yeshe died, people disrobed. I'm like, then why did you ordain, It's like, it's got to be, they get you in the door, yeah? They inspire you, they embody something you want to move towards, but eventually making this kind of not just one lifetime, but possibly multiple lifetimes kind of aspiration commitment. It's got to be something much bigger than that, which is that big goal you're working towards. And I think that's important too, because sometimes you might have the karma to connect with a teacher who benefits you greatly to a certain extent, and then they make mistakes themselves. You know, they slip up in ethical conduct. Then what do? Do you throw out everything you've learned about Buddhism? Do you say one person broke his precept, so now I have no faith? What? Forget it, I'll just give it up too. And we've seen that happen to people. So it's getting really clear in yourself, you know. Like my first Buddhist teacher has made mistakes. And I can see very clearly, I appreciate a lot of things he taught me then. I respect what he's trying to do now to make amends, but it does not shake my faith in the Buddha Dharma. You know, people make mistakes. And they are trying, and at least he's trying to make amends, and that much I have, you know, a lot of, rejoicing for. But it's not going to make me give up my ordination just because my first teacher took a wrong turn. Yeah, making some sense.
Because we've been using the word faith a lot, and Venerable Children would correct us, I think. Yes, like what from the Buddhist perspective. I like faith. It says so much more than this, but the basic understanding is that it is a confidence in this path, confidence in the teacher, confidence in myself. I mean, confidence in precious human life. All those kinds of things. So, from investigating, right, based on logic and reasoning, based on understanding, you know, learning more and more and more, and understanding and applying it to our own lives and see what works based on what you've studied. So that's the real. It's not like I just have to accept this because that's what it's in the book. That is totally not it. It is totally about try it, live it, see how it works, see how it fits for you, see how it helps. And based on our own experience, then confidence grows. And that's the kind of faith we're talking about.
I was thinking when Venerable Samten, when you spoke about your parents, I went through something different but similar, maybe. And I really feel like it's been a very important in my life and my spirituality, understanding of the Dharma is still a mess. And I was wondering how you kind of transformed it or putting it in your practice, or I don't know how to formulate it properly. If any of you other people have ideas, that would be also very fun to hear. Is it clear? Sorry.
Could you say it a slightly different way?
I can try.
Okay.
So I guess I lost a friend, and I think like it was like if the teachings, the Lamrim subjects and all the teachings kind of made it more than just words and concepts, but kind of made in my mind that's just the reality. Yeah? It's just how it is. About death, about suffering, about even lower realms and all these things I could see, and it changed my mind deeply. But it's only been a few months, so like for example today I was very sad. Don't know what to do with that. And like it pushed me really forward to ordination also. Like, you know, like I'm like I don't want to play this game anymore. But yeah, I feel it's like a mess inside. There is a lot happening, and I'm like very confused, which is quite usual. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. Just maybe if you could share in your experience how you worked with your experience with your parents, maybe to make it simple. Thank you.
So when I left to go back and help with my parents, there were so many beautiful moments, even though they were in, the grips of dementia. But they didn't lose their personalities. And so they didn't ever forget who I was or who my siblings were or their friends. They couldn't always come up with a name, but they knew us and their personalities were there. And so at the same time, I saw that life is so short. This is just like a Lamrim teaching moment by moment with them. And I saw more and more clearly my limited capacity, both in trying to help them, because I was so attached to them, and I saw that some of the caregivers were able to keep their composure better than I did, because it wasn't their mom and dad. So, they probably did help them more than I could, because people pick up on stress and grief and everything, so that wasn't helpful. But what I saw is that, the mind is changing moment by moment. If we live long enough, everyone in the room will encounter cognitive decline, as much as we're convinced this is not going to happen. And we're going to experience physical decline. We're all experiencing it right now. And so it just kept coming back to me, like, how can I benefit these people the most? And it was a slow process for me, because I was not a quick learner in those moments, because I was convinced I could be the one to help them. But it became so evident that, the best way to help them and to repay their kindness is to do my own work and to get back here and ordain. And so I came back here, and it was very difficult. And there were moments where, yes, I was a mess inside every single day. But as Venerable Damcho said, the schedule really helped me, because my mind was telling me to just stay in bed. Every day I got up, the mind said, stay in bed. And I said, no, I'm not going to. I can't do that. And just doing the schedule and coming to the teachings and showing up everywhere where I needed to show up. And, the process of being in this community, doing lots of offering service, and we need a lot of merit, that was really helpful. And I tried it. I tried being there. I had to go and try it. There's no question. Like was mentioned earlier, we have to come and try something. And I gave it my best shot, and I couldn't do it. So I came back here. And I got a lot of help from Venerable Children. Some of it was very tough to take. It was very tough to take, but it was very good, strong medicine. So, we have to go through this period of being a mess. And by going through the period of being in a mess, and willing to brave walking through the fire, some clarity comes. And then you just have to decide, what do you want to do with what's left in this life, knowing that it could end tomorrow.
Just add something. So this person I was helping eventually died recently, and I spoke about it yesterday already. It's in my mind. What did I want to say? Yeah, I think one of the things that can we really help people? That was really what shocked me. She was young. She had anorexia, so she had this. At the end, she finally had this strong desire to survive, but she couldn't. Her karma was so strong that I could not do anything. I already spoke about that. Sorry. So that's this is something that is troubling my mind. Can we help people actually, especially if they don't? Even if I say they want, if something deeply cannot just take your hand, then, and the Buddha didn't save everybody. So that's something that I think is difficult inside. That's it.
So can we help people? Not always. We can't always help people. This has been a part of my practice for many years. I have my youngest sister, she's now passed away, but she was not a short-term problem, like having problems short-term, but her whole life, essentially. And so, yeah, I had to struggle with this. And before I moved here, I was unwell in my mind around this. I didn't work with this well. I didn't know how to work with this well. And I feel grateful for the guidance I've gotten here around that, because I was able to resolve this. And what I came up to were a couple things that helped me tremendously. Like, the most important thing when I want to help somebody that I can do is actually to sit down on the cushion and get my mind to be not a mess. It has to kind of start there. Because I was always geared towards action, and I would always what am I going to do? And I would have a game plan, like, I'm going to try this. And I didn't, I learned that, and then when I found there wasn't anything I could do, I would get really depressed about this. It was just it was hard to handle. Kind of like what you're expressing. This is not easy to handle. But I did learn there was something I could do, and this gave me a lot of strength in it. I think this is good enough. It's as good as it gets, I think, and I think it's actually good enough. I came to a place where I realized that what I need to do is I need to keep myself together so that when the opportunity to help is there, I'm available. Because, if I hadn't learned how to work with my mind better, I would not have been available. When I worked in my job, which I did for 30 years, they used to like to give me the hard patients for some reason. And one of my teachers, actually, one of my mentors said, yes, you always hold the door open for them. Like, you're always willing to try to meet people where they are. And I actually did try to do that. And I think I kind of always felt like that was the job, actually, to tell you the truth. But in order to do that, you have to actually, on things that are more difficult, like this wasn't hard in my career, but with my family, this was very difficult for me. And I wasn't well. I was a mess inside. And I had to learn how to get rid of anything that was in the way of me being able to be of help. And that included knowing that the person wasn't even in this life probably going to be able to get to a place where she could benefit from help, necessarily. This is one reason why I became a Buddhist, actually. I needed there to be more lives for my youngest sister. If this is the only one, it was going to be a train wreck. And I always thought it would be her, that I always imagined her as like this train going to a brick wall. I always imagined it would be her hitting that wall. But actually, it was her children who hit the wall first. They both died. 2 of her 3 children died first. They were the first train wrecks in this story. So there's a lot of things to deal with that were difficult. But I found that I would get angry, or I'd get indifferent, or I had attachment. And so I worked on equanimity literally for a good 10 years, a lot. And what it did was it gave me something to do that made me able to be available. So then when I could do what I could do, because I was available, like mentally, emotionally, spiritually, able to be available to a person. You can't help somebody who doesn't want to help themselves. So you can't actually help everybody, because sometimes they're not at a place, they're just, their karma is too far along or something, I don't know. But you can get yourself to a place where you don't succumb to this reality, that you actually prepare yourself. I mean, to me, that's the beauty of the bodhicitta motivation and the 6 perfections, because by doing those, we're going to be in a position where we can see everyone as a friend and have a feeling of warm affection for them. And then we actually can put ourselves in a position to get rid of all of our afflictions that are in the way of us being a benefit to them. So actually, it's such a tall order to get to that place. There's always something for me to do. I never get depressed the way I used to. This never comes up for me. I don't know if that helps you at all, but it's not a short-term story. Yours was a short-term. This was a long-term story. This went on for decades and decades. And it was powerful. We can do something, and we can actually be of benefit to others. And it's not going to be, the Buddha can't help someone unless they come from their side, It takes two to tango.
Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your sharing. So let's just take a moment to digest, and then we'll dedicate and call it good. And so it's good always to rejoice in the merit we've generated. Spending this virtuous time together, exploring monastic life, and we can dedicate that merit, especially for the people who we so want to help. And then extending that wish to so want to help to every living being. And so just really be delighted in having had the chance to nourish the seeds in ourselves. And may we be of benefit in the best way possible. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May the born have no decline, but increase forevermore.